Attraction is rarely direct. Desire rarely speaks out loud. It hides behind curiosity, pauses, and carefully chosen words. When a woman feels drawn toward an older man, she rarely chases, she observes, she measures, she tests. These tests often arrive as simple questions asked casually, almost playfully, yet inside those questions sits a deep psychological filter that decides whether attraction grows stronger or fades away. Most men hear these questions and miss their meaning. A few understand exactly what is happening, and those men stand out instantly. In this video, you will learn why women use subtle verbal tests when they crave an older man, and why these tests appear far more often when emotional interest is high. You will discover the hidden psychology behind two specific questions that show up again and again across cultures, ages, and relationship dynamics. These questions seem harmless on the surface, yet they reveal how a woman evaluates confidence, emotional control, direction, and masculine presence. Research in behavioral psychology shows that attraction responds more to emotional stability than to appearance or status, and these tests exist to measure exactly that. You will also learn why many intelligent and successful men lose attraction in seconds, simply by answering these questions the wrong way. The mistake rarely comes from bad intentions. It comes from over-explanation, emotional leakage, and the quiet need for approval that slips into the voice. This video breaks down how female psychology reads these signals instantly, often without conscious awareness. You will see how older men who remain calm, grounded, and self-directed create a sense of safety and intrigue at the same time. Stay until the end, because the final section reveals the deeper reason these questions matter more than compliments, flirting, or charm. You will understand how women subconsciously test for leadership through conversation, and why silence, tone, and restraint carry more power than clever words. This insight changes the way conversations unfold, especially when attraction already exists beneath the surface. This video also explores lesser-known findings from psychological studies on mate selection, emotional regulation, and perceived authority. These findings explain why maturity creates attraction when paired with self-control, and why age alone never creates desire. The difference lies in presence. A man who understands these tests never rushes, never proves, and never performs. His energy speaks first. If you want to understand female psychology on a deeper level, this video will give you clarity that most people never hear explained. Watch closely, listen carefully, and notice how subtle shifts in response change everything. Welcome to our channel where psychology meets real-world dynamics and unspoken attraction becomes clear. Subscribe now and stay with us for more insights that help you move through relationships with calm confidence and quiet authority. Women tend to test older men differently because the expectations are different from the very beginning. Age signals experience, and experience carries weight. With that weight comes an assumption of emotional steadiness, self-control, and direction. When a woman feels drawn to an older man, the attraction often rests less on excitement and more on the promise of security. Calm behavior, measured speech, and consistency suggest a man who has already faced life and learned from it. That expectation quietly raises the standard. Attraction deepens, but so does caution, because emotional investment feels more serious when stability is involved. Craving brings a sense of risk that the mind wants to manage. Emotional attachment has consequences, and the subconscious seeks reassurance before allowing desire to grow. This is where testing begins. These tests are rarely intentional or planned. They surface as curiosity, light conversation, or simple questions that seem harmless. In reality, they act as emotional checkpoints. The mind watches how an older man handles pressure, ambiguity, and uncertainty. Responses reveal far more than the words themselves. Tone, timing, and restraint all communicate information. Testing becomes a way to protect emotional boundaries, ensuring that attraction is placed where it feels safe and grounded, rather than impulsive or unstable. Behavior creates first impressions, but words expose emotional structure. When a woman asks questions, she is not collecting information in a literal sense. She is listening for stability beneath the surface. Language carries emotional weight, and the way a man responds under subtle pressure reveals how he handles himself when stakes rise. A calm voice, a measured pace, and the ability to stay centered communicate confidence more clearly than gestures or action. Words become the window through which emotional strength is evaluated. Questions function as pressure points. because they invite reaction. They open a space where insecurity, defensiveness, or neediness can quietly slip through. A man who rushes to explain or justify himself signals uncertainty without realizing it. A man who pauses, chooses his words carefully, and speaks with ease signals self-respect and internal balance. Boundaries appear through what he does not say as much as through what he does. Self-worth shows up in the absence of urgency, in the comfort with silence, and in the lack of emotional bargaining. For an older man, this moment carries extra weight. His response becomes a reflection of his life experience. The evaluation is less about the content of his answer and more about how naturally it lands. This is where patterns begin to form, where attraction either settles in or quietly pulls away. As emotional interest grows, conversations begin to follow a familiar rhythm. Attraction brings curiosity, and curiosity looks for structure. This is where patterns quietly take shape. Regardless of background, culture, or age, the mind tends to return to the same reference points when evaluating a potential partner. These patterns show up in conversation, often without conscious awareness. The tone feels relaxed, the timing feels natural, and the questions appear to rise on their own, as though they were simply part of getting to know someone. These questions usually arrive wrapped in casual language. They do not sound serious or calculated. They blend easily into everyday conversation, which is why they are so often overlooked. Yet beneath the surface, they serve a precise purpose. Each question functions as a checkpoint, a moment where emotional interest pauses briefly to assess direction and safety. The mind observes how smoothly the exchange flows, how tension is handled, and whether the energy remains grounded. Over time, these checkpoints repeat with remarkable consistency. They surface in early attraction, during growing familiarity, and sometimes even after connection has already formed. The pattern remains stable because the need behind it remains the same. Emotional investment requires reassurance, and conversation becomes the tool through which that reassurance is quietly measured. When she asks what he's looking for right now, the question carries more weight than it appears. On the surface, it sounds like curiosity about timing or preference. Beneath that, it is a quiet evaluation of direction and emotional control. She listens for signs of leadership in the way he frames his answer. Direction shows whether his life is moving forward with purpose. Emotional leadership shows whether he can hold his ground without leaning on her for certainty. Self-control reveals itself in how much pressure he places on the moment. What she is truly listening for is whether he needs her to complete something missing, or whether he chooses connection from a place of fullness. A man who speaks with clarity without attaching urgency to the outcome signals inner stability. His words feel grounded, open, and unforced. There is intention, but no rush. Interest is present, yet it does not feel demanding. This creates space rather than pressure. When the answer turns overly romantic or heavily emotional, the tone shifts. Immediate commitment language can feel premature, even overwhelming. Attempts to define the relationship too quickly suggest a desire to secure rather than to connect. In that moment, attraction pauses to reassess. The response becomes less about interest and more about emotional balance, and the energy of the exchange subtly changes. When an older man fails these tests, the shift in attraction happens quickly and often without visible conflict. The expectation of strength is already present, and when that expectation is broken, the emotional response changes almost instantly. Strength in this context is not dominance or control. It is steadiness. It is the ability to remain composed when attention is focused on him. When composure fades, attraction begins to lose its anchor. Over-explaining is one of the fastest ways this happens. Long justifications and unnecessary details suggest uncertainty beneath the surface. Instead of confidence, the response carries tension. The energy moves from grounded to reactive. In moments like these, the conversation starts to feel heavy, even if the words sound polite or thoughtful. The shift is subtle, but it is felt. Seeking approval creates an even sharper drop. When responses are shaped to gain reassurance or validation, mystery disappears. The interaction becomes predictable, and predictability removes emotional pull. Calm presence, on the other hand, creates gravity. It slows the pace of the exchange and allows attraction to settle rather than rush. Silence feels comfortable instead of awkward. Responses feel intentional rather than defensive. This calm holds attention without effort, and when it is missing, attraction quietly withdraws. At the core of these interactions lies a simple psychological mechanism. The questions are never designed to corner or confuse. They function as filters that allow emotional clarity to emerge. Through conversation, a woman observes how an older man carries himself when attention is focused on him. She is drawn to steadiness, to the sense that he remains the same regardless of interest or outcome. This consistency creates emotional safety and quiet attraction at the same time. A steady man does not react sharply or rush to fill silence. His responses feel balanced, grounded in self-awareness rather than performance. He does not lean on his age as proof of value, and he does not try to amplify it for effect. Experience shows through behavior and tone, not through explanation. This creates a sense of authenticity that feels rare and reassuring. There is also a strong sensitivity to validation seeking. When an older man chases reassurance or approval, the dynamic shifts. Instead of leadership, the interaction begins to feel uncertain. Emotional interest responds to confidence that stands on its own, without the need for external confirmation. The filter quietly does its work in these moments, separating presence from performance. What remains is the energy of a man who knows himself, moves at his own pace, and allows connection to develop without pressure. Desire is never something that can be pushed or persuaded into existence. It unfolds quietly through observation, through moments where energy is felt rather than explained. It is tested in conversation, in silence, and in the way a man holds himself when nothing is guaranteed. Attraction responds to presence, not performance. The man who remains centered does not search for the perfect response because his stability speaks before words ever do. His calm creates trust. His restraint creates and creates. His certainty allows desire to grow without pressure. These psychological tests are part of how connection deepens. They are not obstacles to overcome, but signals to read. When a man stays grounded, he does not rush to define outcomes or secure approval. He allows interest to unfold naturally, knowing that strength is felt most clearly when it does not need to announce itself. This is where attraction settles and stays. Say less. Stay grounded. That is what passes every test. If this video helped you see attraction from a deeper psychological perspective, support the channel by liking this video. Subscribe to our channel for more insights into human behavior, emotional dynamics, and unspoken attraction that most people never learn.